That summer we rented a small green boat, and the river wore a slow smile as we pushed off from the muddy bank. The sky was pale with heat. The willows along the shore wept long threads of shade into the water, and the air carried the taste of pine sap and cut grass, warmed to honey by the sun. My father stood at the stern, his hands rough from rope and work, his breath steady as a clock, while my mother kept a careful watch on my little sister, who squealed at gulls and threw daisies toward the water as if the lake might catch them and keep them for herself. We hadn't planned a grand adventure, just a week away from the town and its rules, a week to learn the feel of things in a new way. But that day, the river answered in a language I would spend my life trying to understand. Not words, but currents, gravity, and a patient kind of listening. My father showed me how to place the oars so the boat would ride the current rather than fight it, how to lean into the bend and let the water carry us, how to read the glint of the surface like a map that changes with the sun. The first hour we drifted through sunlit patches where minnows flickered like coins, where dragonflies hammered the air with their thin wings and hummed a pale green sound I cannot quite name. The river smelled of warm earth and something like rain that never fell, of the soft sweetness of leaves pressed against old canvas, of the damp rope in the boat that smelled of salt and wood. I felt the boat's wooden ribs sigh beneath me, and the sound, hum, creak, sigh, made a small music that curled into my chest and settled there, safe and quiet. We rounded a bend where willows leaned out over the water, their long fingers brushing the surface as if asking the boat to tell them its secrets. The water glowed with a gold edge, as if the river itself wore a halo in the sun. My sister squealed again, and my mother laughed, a sound that sounded to me like bells heard at a distance, a sound that made the heat feel less heavy, more bearable. Then, without warning, the current changed its mind and pulled us toward a tangle of reeds that grew along the bank, a green cathedral where the water hissed softly and settled into a still, thick green. The boat lurched. The oar slipped from my grip, and for a moment fear sharpened every sense. The rough bark against the palms of my hands, the ache in my shoulders where the rope cut, the way the world narrowed to the circle of air in my lungs. I wanted to cry out, to plead for safety, to pretend I knew what I was doing. But my father did not yell. He spoke in a voice that was not loud, only enough to steady the tremble in my breath. Steady now. Look where you want to go, not at what you fear. He guided the oar back into the water, coaxed the boat away from the reeds, and the river answered by easing its grip. The current found a gentler path, and we slid forward again, as if the world exhaled after a held breath. In that moment, I learned what it meant to wait. Not to resist, not to pretend, but to watch with patient eyes and to move when the moment asked for it. We drifted longer in that slower place, listening to the soft slosh, the distant clack of a railroad perched beyond the hills, the faint laughter of people on the shore where we would have to return. The water carried us, and I realized that the river did not rush to prove itself. It was content to be, and in its being it taught me to be too. When we finally reached a quiet bend where the current loosened and allowed us to rest, the world opened a little. I saw in the water a reflection of the sky, a pale blue bowl rimmed with listening trees, and the boat's own white wake breathing behind us like a small, honest thing. My father looked at me and smiled with the corners of his eyes. "That's right," he said, not as a reward for bravery, but as a gentle acknowledgement of growing up. "You are learning to meet the world where it sits, not where you wish it to be." The rest of that day moved by like a slow drumbeat. Lunch on a pebble shore, the bread crusty as old bark, the jam sweet with the memory of wild strawberries, a cup of coffee that tasted of smoke and long roads. My mother laid a hand on my hair and told me nothing in particular, just that I did well today, that I kept my head when the river tried to tilt us. My sister, her cheeks flushed from the sun, collected shells that clinked softly in a tin, trusting the river to keep its secrets while we tried to keep ours. That night, after supper, the air cooled and the world grew soft with dusk. We sat on the porch of the little rented house, the wood warm under our palms, the screen door a wheeze away from waking to the night. Fireflies drifted in the air like small bright bells, and a cricket choir rose from the grass. The lake beyond the yard wore a thin veil of mist, and the far-off sound of crickets stitched a lid over the day. We spoke little, as if the fullness of what had happened demanded quiet to settle, to become something large and quiet inside us. Looking back, I realized that day was a hinge on my life's door. Before it, I believed strength was loud, something to be shown. After it, I learned that strength could be quiet, that patience could be a kind of courage. The river did not take my breath away by fear, but by invitation to listen, to adjust, to trust that movement could be gentle and still be enough. In the years that followed, I wandered in other currents. Jobs, moves, loves that grew or withered, the tides of disappointment and grace. The noise of life sometimes drowned the memory of those early lessons, but the essence did not vanish. When I manage a difficult conversation now, or when I stand in a crowded room and remind myself to breathe, I hear again the way the river coaxed my youth into presence. I feel again the ache of learning to wait. And the quiet relief when waiting becomes a kind of doing that keeps one safe and true. Time, of course, has carved its own paths through me. My hands, once sure at the oars, now tremble a little, and there are lines in my face that echo the river's curves, the gentle bends that shaped the water, and in turn, me. The house around me grows older with every season. The walls thin and widen with the stories they hold. Yet certain memories endure with a stubborn brightness. The sun-pressed scent of grass after rain, the taste of lemonade on a warm afternoon, the sound of my father's breathing as he slept in the afternoon shade, the feeling of being held by the quiet promise of a shore you know you must reach, even if you cannot see it yet. Sometimes let the world tell you it's time, and then move with it, not against it. There is a lifetime of small, ordinary scenes like that one. Mornings when the kettle sings and the bread is still warm. Evenings when the porch light glows and the crickets begin their patient chorus. Winter afternoons when the snow on the fields is so quiet you could hear a mouse breathe. I have learned that these are not empty chapters, but the furniture of a life. They hold us steady, even as we grow acheful and old, and they point toward a truth I can only guess at from the margin of time. That meaning is not a fireworks show, but a steady glow that lingers in the corners of a room, in the hands of the people we love, in the quiet acceptance that life is both fragile and enduring. As I sit here now, a little slower than I was, a little more forgiving of my own faults, I can feel again the river's breath curling along the bank, the soft and patient exhale. The memory returns not only as a memory, but as a moral gentleness is not weakness, and bravery is not loud, but the ability to stay, to listen, to wait, to try again when the current pulls you off course. The boat, the current, the trees, the heat, the whole day returns as a small, bright bell chiming in my chest, reminding me that I am still learning how to live in the world with care. and so I carry that summer with me, not as conquest, but as companionship. A friend who taught me to be still enough to hear what matters, who taught me that one day's ordinary act can become the lighthouse when the night grows long. If I could tell a younger self anything, I would say, be patient, be gentle. You do not have to win to be whole. The river will carry you in its own time if you will let it. And when you cannot hear it, open your memory and listen for the soft, stubborn sound of a boat's old wood. And remember that you learned there what you needed to learn about staying with life, about being present to it, about letting life, in its quiet, slowly generous way, carry you home. If there is gratitude in my old heart, it sits like a sun-warmed stone in the palm. Gratitude for the day that began with a simple drift and ended with a vow to keep listening. Gratitude for a father's patient teaching. Gratitude for a river that forgave my fear and then showed me a way to